The evening light shimmered across the glass windows of a busy city restaurant, a place filled with laughter, soft jazz music, and the faint clinking of silver spoons. Outside, the rain had turned the streets into mirrors, reflecting neon signs and lonely footsteps. Among them walked a thin girl, her clothes damp, clutching a worn sketchbook close to her chest as though it were treasure. Her name was Lily. Her stomach had been empty since morning, but her spirit hadn't yet given up. She stopped near the restaurant entrance, eyes tracing the warmth inside, the golden light, the steam rising from plates, the scent of bread. A droplet slid from her hair to her lips, tasting faintly of salt. She inhaled deeply, took one hesitant step forward, and whispered to herself, "Just one meal. I'll find a way to earn it." The waiter at the door glanced at her with quick disapproval, but before he could speak, Lily lifted her sketchbook slightly. "Sir, I can draw," she said softly. "Just one picture, for some food. Please." Her voice was fragile but steady, like someone who had practiced bravery too many times. Inside, a few customers turned to look. Some frowned. Others pretended not to notice. The waiter sighed, unsure what to do. Then a voice from a corner table, deep, calm, curious, said, "Let her in." All heads turned toward the source. A man in his late 50s, dressed in a dark suit, watched her over a cup of untouched coffee. His name was Ethan Hartley, a billionaire known for his success, not his softness. Yet something about the girl's voice made him pause. The waiter hesitated, then stepped aside. Lily entered quietly, her wet shoes squeaking against the floor. She sat near the corner, away from the crowd. Ethan kept observing, not out of pity, but out of an old ache he couldn't explain. Lily opened her sketchbook and began to draw. Her fingers were thin, trembling slightly, yet her lines moved with grace. Within minutes, shapes appeared, the outline of the restaurant, the glow of the hanging lights, even the reflection of the people eating. It was as if she captured life from memory rather than sight. Ethan couldn't stop watching. There was something haunting in the way she smiled between strokes, as if drawing made her forget her hunger. He whispered to himself, "How long has you been fighting to stay alive this gently?" "Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads." When Lily finished, she lifted the page gently, the pencil dust smudged on her fingers. "Hey," she said to the waiter, offering the drawing. "Can I have something to eat now?" The waiter, moved but confused, turned toward Ethan. Ethan nodded slowly, and within minutes, a plate of warm soup and bread was placed before her. Lily's eyes widened. "Thank you," she whispered, bowing slightly. As she ate, tears mixed with rainwater on her cheeks. The soup wasn't much, but it was the first kindness she'd received in weeks. The billionaire kept watching, his heart pulling tighter with every small spoonful she took. He didn't yet know why this girl mattered, but something deep inside told him he was looking at a reflection of someone he'd once lost. When Lily finished, she stood again, holding her sketchbook to her chest. "I'll come tomorrow too, sir," she said to the waiter. "I can draw something new every day." Ethan leaned forward. "Do you always trade art for food?" he asked gently. She toned, startled that he'd spoken. "Only when I can't find work. Drawing makes people less afraid of me." He smiled faintly, though his eyes darkened. No one should need to trade beauty to survive. Lily looked down, unsure how to respond. "But beauty's all I have left," she whispered. Those words hit Ethan like an old wound reopening. He remembered another voice, his daughter's, years ago, saying something almost the same. He hadn't seen her since she left home. The resemblance, the tone, the innocence, it was all there in this hungry girl's face. Rain began again outside, softly drumming against the glass. The restaurant emptied slowly, but Ethan stayed, lost in thought. Lily packed her things and bowed politely before leaving. "Thank you for the meal, sir," she said, her voice shaking but warm. As she walked out into the storm, Ethan's reflection stayed in the window, a rich man haunted by poverty he couldn't erase, guilt he couldn't name, and a sudden need to follow a stranger who somehow felt like family. He rose from his seat, grabbed his coat, and stepped into the rain after her. The night swallowed them both, but something invisible began to glow, not from light, but from an emotion too human to hide. Hope trying to find its way back home. Ethan followed the faint outline of Lily's figure through the curtain of rain, her small body disappearing and reappearing beneath the glow of streetlights. Her thin shoes splashed through puddles, but she didn't hurry. She moved with the weary grace of someone used to being unseen. He kept his distance at first, unsure why he was following. Maybe guilt. Maybe curiosity. Maybe something older than both, a father's instinct long buried. Lily turned into a narrow alley, where a single flickering bulb illuminated a rusted doorway. She crouched beside it, unrolled a torn blanket, and sat down. Her hands trembled as she pulled out a pencil stub and started sketching again. This time, the reflection of raindrops in a puddle. She wasn't drawing for anyone now, just for herself. Ethan stepped closer, his polished shoes soaking in the mud. "Do you live here?" he asked softly. Startled, Lily looked up. I don't live anywhere," she said. "Sometimes here. Sometimes by the bridge. It's quieter when it rains." He felt the ache deepen. "You shouldn't be out here alone. It's freezing." "I've been colder," she murmured, offering a faint smile. "The streets are kinder than most people." Her words were simple, but they pierced through his chest. He looked at her drawings scattered around her feet, pages filled with life, emotion, places she'd probably never been. "You have a gift," he said. "Why aren't you in school? Or an art program?" She gave a small laugh, not bitter, just tired. "School costs money, and drawings don't feed you unless someone kind stops to notice." Her eyes held a quiet wisdom, one that seemed far too old for her face. Ethan sat beside her, the billionaire and the beggar girl beneath the same broken awning. For a while, they just listened, to the rain, to silence, to something human that didn't need words. After a pause, he asked, "What's your name?" "Lily," she said softly. "Like the flower. My mom named me that because she said lilies bloom even in the mud." He smiled faintly. "Your mother sounds wise." She was. A pause. "She got sick last year. After she was gone, there wasn't much left except my sketchbook." Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to say something comforting, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and took out his wallet. "Hey, take this. You can buy food or clothes." But Lily shook her head. "No, sir. I only draw for what I need. I don't take money I didn't own." He stared at her in disbelief, at the quiet pride in her voice, the refusal to surrender her dignity. He'd met countless people chasing money. She was the first to reject it. "Then draw something for me," he said finally. "Something that means hope." Her eyes lit faintly. "Hope?" "Yes," he nodded. "Whatever it looks like to you." She pulled her blanket tighter around his shoulders and began to sketch again, the rain whispering like applause around them. Her hands moved fast, certain. Ethan watched, his heart slowing to her rhythm, the soft scratching of pencil on paper. Minutes later, she turned the sketchbook toward him. It was a simple drawing, 2 hands, one small and frail, the other large and steady, reaching toward each other through falling rain. In the background, a faint sun breaking through clouds. He stared at it for a long moment. "It's beautiful," he whispered. Lily smiled shyly. "It's you," she said. "Helping a stranger. That's what hope looks like." For the first time in years, Ethan felt tears threaten to escape. He had everything money could buy, but not this purity, not this grace. He folded the page gently and slipped it into his coat. "You've given me something priceless, Lily." She tilted her head. "Then maybe I finally earned enough for a roof tonight," she said playfully, and both of them laughed, a fragile, healing sound against the storm. They didn't know it yet, but that laugh will become the start of something far bigger, a connection that would test the limits of guilt, generosity, and love. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. The rain eased into mist. Ethan stood, still holding her drawing. "Come on," he said quietly. "There's a shelter nearby. It's safe. At least for tonight." Lily hesitated. "I don't want to be trouble." "You won't be," Something in his tone, steady, kind, paternal, made her trust him. She followed, keeping her distance but walking beside him under his umbrella. They passed glowing storefronts, their reflections trailing behind like ghosts. At the shelter, Ethan arranged for a room and a meal. As she entered, Lily turned to him and whispered, "Thank you for seeing me." He only smiled. "You reminded me how to look." When he left, he didn't realize how deeply those words would echo through his life. How that night, the act of saving her would begin to save him too. Outside, as he stepped back into the quiet city, Ethan felt something shift, as though a light long buried beneath grief had flickered alive again. But he didn't yet know that Lily's story was about to reveal more than hunger, more than art. It would uncover truth powerful enough to break his heart all over again. The next morning, sunlight streamed faintly through the half-broken windows of the shelter. Lily sat cross-legged on her small cot, her sketchbook open, her fingers tracing the same drawing she had made for Ethan, the one with the two hands reaching for each other. It had already become her talisman of hope. For the first time in months, she had slept without fear. The soft hum of other girls breathing in nearby beds felt almost like safety. But when she rose to wash her face, her reflection startled her, pale, fragile, eyes ringed with exhaustion. She whispered to herself, "You're still here, don't waste it." Meanwhile, across the city, Ethan sat at his desk in a high-rise office surrounded by glass and silence. The world saw him as powerful, the billionaire who built empires and broke records. But that morning, all he could look at was Lily's drawing line beside his laptop. Every line spoke of something he'd forgotten, the quiet grace of giving. His secretary entered. "Sir, the board meeting is ready." He looked up absently. "Reschedule it." "Reschedule? So, it's with investors." "I said reschedule," he repeated, softer but firmer. "Some things can wait." He left the office, taking the drawing with him. By noon, Ethan returned to the shelter, unsure what he planned to say. When he stepped inside, the noise of chatter and laughter softened. The staff recognized him instantly. His presence felt out of place among the peeling walls and faded posters. But when Lily saw him, her face brightened like morning. "You came back," she said, her voice small but warm. "I told you I wanted another drawing." He smiled. "Besides, I didn't get to pay you for the first one." She laughed lightly. "You already did, with soup." He knelt down so their eyes were level. "What if I told you I could help you draw every day, not for food, but for future?" Lily froze. "What do you mean?" "I run an art foundation. We support young talents who can't afford training. If you're willing, I can get you into a program, a real one." Her breath caught. "You'd do that for me." "You earned it," he said simply. Tears welled in her eyes. For the first time, she didn't know how to respond. Joy and disbelief tangled inside her chest. "No one's ever believed in me before," she whispered. Ethan smiled. "Then let me be the first." "Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think." Weeks passed. Lily began attending classes at the art center Ethan sponsored. The first time she walked into the building, her hands trembled, not from fear, but from a feeling of stepping into a new world. Canvases lined the walls, paintbrushes gleamed under light, and colors she once saw only in dreams were now haze to hold. She painted late into the evenings, sometimes sleeping in corners, sometimes humming to herself while sketching faces of strangers. The teachers admired her raw skill. "You see people the way poets see the sky," one of them told her. Ethan visited often, quietly sitting at the back while she worked. He never interfered, never treated her like charity. To him, she was not a project. She was a reminder of everything pure that money could never buy. One evening, Lily painted something new, not streets or faces, but a child holding a candle under the stars. Ethan noticed the way she stared at it afterward, her eyes glistening. "Who's the child?" he asked. She hesitated. "It's me. When Mom was sick," she said, "be the candle, not the darkness." I promised her I'd try. Ethan swallowed the lump in his throat. "You've kept that promise, Lily." She smiled faintly. "Maybe, but sometimes the light feels too small for the world." He leaned closer. Even the smallest light can guide someone home. Lily's eyes softened. She didn't know why, but his words always carried a weight, a tenderness that felt almost fatherly. Outside, the city light shimmered, and for a brief moment, she felt like she belonged somewhere, like the world finally had a place for her. But fate had a cool way of testing fragile joy. The next morning, when she arrived at the art center, the director handed her an envelope. "Lily," he said gently, "Mr. Hartley's assistant dropped this off." Inside was a single note in Ethan's handwriting. "Had to leave for urgent matters. Keep drawing. I'll return soon." There was also a newspaper clipping folded beside it, a headline that made her heart skip. "Ethan Hartley's company under investigation for financial misconduct." Her hands trembled. She didn't understand everything, but she understood loss. And she knew. Sometimes when the world turns dark, it doesn't wait for you to be ready. She whispered to herself, "Not again. Please, not this time." Outside the art center, rain began to fall. Soft at first, then heavy, as if the sky itself mourned a fragile bond between a man trying to make amends and a girl who only ever asked for a meal. And just like that, the story that had begun with hunger was about to starve again. This time, not for food, but for answers. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan never returned. The art center carried on, but to Lily, the colors had dulled. Every brushstroke felt heavier, slower, as if each one pulled her further into a silence she couldn't name. The teachers noticed a fading spark, but no one knew the reason. Only Lily did. Every evening, she sat by the studio window and drew him, not his face, but fragments of memory. The hand that had reached for her in the rain, the soft smile behind his tired eyes, the way he had said, "Even the smallest light can guide someone home." But she was starting to fear that he had lost his own light. Meanwhile, Ethan sat alone in a mansion that now felt like a cage. The news had spread fast, his company accused of fraudulent investments, partners betraying him, reputations crumbling. For the first time in decades, his empire was collapsing, and he realized that all the wealth he guarded couldn't protect what truly mattered. He didn't care about money anymore, only about the one promise he hadn't kept. "Keep drawing. I'll return soon." But soon had turned into endless tomorrows. One night, as thunder rolled across the city, Ethan opened his drawer and pulled out Lily's first sketch, the hands reaching through rain. The pencil lines had smudged slightly, yet the message still pulsed through them. Connection, compassion, forgiveness. He whispered, "You taught me to give, and I left you waiting." He folded the drawing, placed it in his coat, and made a decision. No matter what the world thought of him, he would find her again. The next morning, Lily received word from the shelter that a man had been asking for her. She ran through the streets, clutching her sketchbook close, hope pounding inside her chest like a heartbeat. When she saw him standing across the street, disheveled, older, but smiling, her breath caught. The rain had returned, as if the sky remembered them. "You came back," she whispered, stepping closer. "I promised I would," Ethan said, voice trembling with something between guilt and relief. "I had things to fix, but I never forgot you." Lily looked at him for a long moment, her eyes softening. "You didn't need to come back with money," she said. "You already gave me more than that." He smiled faintly. "Still, I owe you something more than gratitude." "What's that?" "A chance to show the world your light." He explained his plan, to host a charity art exhibition featuring young artists from the Shelton Foundation, with Lily as a centerpiece. Her work would not only be displayed, but sold to raise funds for others like her. Her mouth fell open slightly. "Me? But I'm not ready." He shook his head gently. "You're more ready than you think. Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight." The next few weeks were a blur of brushes, colors, and sleepless nights. Lily poured her soul into her paintings, each one a fragment of a journey. One showed a small girl staring at an empty plate, another a pair of hands lifting her up from the shadows. And finally, one painting titled "The Meal I Never Paid For." It depicted a young girl sitting in a restaurant, her eyes wide with hunger and hope, while a stranger watched her from across the room. When Ethan saw it for the first time, his eyes filled, "You've turned pain into poetry," he said quietly. Lily smiled through tears. "You taught me how." The night of the exhibition arrived. The hall shimmered with soft lights, canvases glowing like windows into forgotten stories. Guests whispered in awe, pausing at Lily's work. Some cried, some smiled sadly, and at the center of it all stood the girl who once offered a drawing for food, now surrounded by people bidding to own a piece of her heart. Ethan watched from afar, a proud yet broken man. His past mistakes still haunted him, but for the first time, he saw something redeeming in his ruin. When the final painting sold, for more money than he'd ever imagined, Lily walked up to him, eyes shining. "We can help so many children now," she said. He nodded, his throat too tight for words. But before the applause faded, a man approached Ethan with a grim look, one of his former partners, now dressed in bitterness. "You think one charity event makes you holy again," he sneered. "You ruined lives, hotly." Ethan didn't flinch. "Maybe. But tonight, I saved one." The man scoffed and walked away. Lily saw the exchange, her heart twisting. She didn't know everything about Ethan's past, but she understood one thing deeply. Guilt doesn't erase goodness, and goodness doesn't erase guilt. Both can live in the same heart. When the hall emptied and the night softened into quiet, Lily handed him a folded paper. "What's this?" he asked. "Your portrait," she smiled. "I wanted to draw how I see you, not what others say." He unfolded it slowly. It was a sketch of a man standing in the rain, holding an umbrella over a child, his face tired but kind, his eyes full of light breaking through sorrow. Ethan's lips trembled. "You make me look like someone worth forgiving." "Maybe you are," she whispered. The rain began again outside, echoing their first meeting. And this time, both of them smiled at the sound, as if it were their story's song, replayed just for them. But destiny, cool as ever, wasn't done testing them yet. The night after the exhibition, Ethan returned home feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. The laughter, the applause, the sight of Lily's joy still lingered in his mind like the echo of a beautiful song. He placed her portrait on the mantelpiece, beside an old photograph of his late daughter, Grace. For a long while, he just stood there, watching them both, one from his past, one from his redemption. But somewhere deep inside, a quiet ache remained. Grace had been an artist too, just like Lily. She used to paint by the garden window, her hands always smudged with color. They had fought one night, years ago, when he dismissed her dream to paint for a living. He had called it a waste of potential. She had left home that very night and never returned. A car accident took her weeks later. He had buried his heart that day, until a hungry girl with a sketchbook had unknowingly dug it out of the grave. That realization struck him like lightning. Every moment with Lily, the rain, the drawings, the shelter, wasn't just kindness. It was his subconscious trying to rewrite the past. He whispered to the empty room, "I see you now, Grace. I see you in her." The next morning, Ethan drove to the art center early, hoping to tell Lily the truth, not just about his loss, but about what she had healed in him. But when he arrived, the staff was gathered outside in a rush. Their faces were pale. "What's going on?" he asked. The director looked up, troubled. "It's Lily. She collapsed during class. They've taken her to St. Mary's Hospital." Ethan's world stopped. He didn't wait for details. He ran. Every traffic light blurred past. The rain had started again, just as it had the first night they met. He burst through the hospital doors, breathless, demanding, "Where's Lily?" A nurse led him to a small room at the end of the hall. Lily lay there, pale against white sheets, an oxygen tube resting lightly under her nose. Her sketchbook sat on the bedside table, open to a half-finished drawing of a sunrise. "Malnutrition and exhaustion," the doctor said quietly. "Her body's been through too much for too long. She needs rest, proper care, and maybe a miracle." Ethan sank into the chair beside her bed. "Why didn't you tell me you were sick?" he whispered, his voice breaking. Her eyelids fluttered open slowly. "Didn't want to worry you," she murmured. "I'm fine, just tired." "You're not fine, Lily. You've been starving yourself to give everything away." She smiled faintly. "Isn't that what you did once?" His throat tightened. "I gave away money, not my life." You gave away your loneliness, she said softly. That counts. Tears welled in his eyes. He reached for her hand, small, fragile, but still warm. I'm not losing you too, he whispered. Not like I lost her. Huh? He hesitated. Then, in a trembling voice, he told her everything, about Grace, about the fight, about how her aunt had brought back the daughter he'd buried. Lily listened silently, her fingers tightening around his. Maybe that's why we met, she said finally. Maybe Grace wanted you to find me, so neither of us would be alone. Ethan broke down, unable to hold back anymore. You're my second chance, Lily. Her eyes glistened. Then don't waste it. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. 4 days, Ethan stayed by her side. He refused meetings, ignored calls. His entire world shrank to that hospital room. He watched her draw when she could, her pencil moving weakly but determinedly across the page. I have to finish this, she would whisper. What are you drawing? He asked once. Home, she said. A place I've never had, but I'm starting to imagine. He smiled sadly. You already built one, right here, he said, tapping his heart. Outside the window, the rain finally stopped. The sky, still gray, carried a strange calm. It was as if the world was pausing, waiting for something sacred. One evening, as the monitors beeped gently, Lily reached for her sketchbook again. Promise me something, she whispered. Anything. If I can't finish this drawing, you will, for me. He nodded, unable to speak. Her eyes closed, her breathing evened, and she whispered one last word before sleep took her. Dad. Ethan froze. She hadn't meant to say it, but the sound of it broke him completely. That night, as he sat watching her, he finally understood. Family wasn't blood. It was connection, compassion, shared pain healed through love. And sometimes, the people who enter your life by chance are the ones you were always meant to find. But fate had one more cruel test before peace could arrive. The next morning, alarms echoed through the hospital halls. Nurses rushed into Lily's room. Ethan stood frozen at the doorway, his heart pounding as machine screamed. Lily, he shouted, his voice shattering the sterile air. Doctors surrounded her, their movements frantic, the beeping, the shouting, the chaos, all blurred into a single sound of fear. And then, silence. Ethan stood trembling, his hands gripping the doorframe. Sir, a nurse whispered, we've stabilized her, but she's in a coma. He collapsed into the chair, tears falling freely. Hold on, Lily, he whispered. Please, hold on. You still have to finish your sunrise. Outside, dawn broke faintly, gray light spilling across the rain-washed glass, as if the universe itself was listening to his prayer. For the next several days, Ethan lived inside the hospital like a shadow, barely eating, barely sleeping. He sat beside Lily's bed, reading to her from old art books, hoping his voice might reach wherever she was wandering. The doctor said she could still hear him. That thought became his only comfort. Every morning, he brought her favorite pencils, sharpening each one carefully, arranging them beside her pillow. Just in case you wake up today, he would whisper, you will have what you love waiting for you. The nurses began to know him by name, the quiet man who never left the room, who watched over a sleeping girl like a father over a child lost in dreams. Days turned to weeks. Rain came and went, but Lily remained still. The only movement was a soft rise and fall of her chest. Ethan often looked out the window at night, asking the stars for forgiveness, for Grace, for Lily, for himself. One evening, a volunteer entered the room carrying small candles for the patients' families. Would you like to light one? She asked. He nodded silently. As he placed a candle near the window, he whispered, this one's for the 2 girls who taught me how to feel again. Then, as if the flame carried his words, he felt something stir inside him, a fragile but unmistakable hope. He sat down and opened Lily's sketchbook. On the last page, she had drawn faint outlines of a sunrise, the one she had promised to finish. He picked up a pencil and began to trace her lines, trembling, afraid to ruin what she had started. His hand shook as he shaded the edges of light, but as the drawing formed, Something inside him broke and healed all at once. He realized he wasn't just completing a picture. He was finishing a story of redemption neither of them had planned. When the nurse returned later that night, she found Ethan asleep beside the bed, his hand still holding the pencil, the drawing glowing faintly under the lamp. And for the first time in weeks, Lily's finger twitched. Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. By morning, the doctors noticed small signs, faint brain responses, a flicker of movement. Ethan didn't dare believe it until he saw her eyelashes flutter. He leaned forward instantly. Lily? It's me. Can you hear me? Her lips parted weakly. A whisper escaped. Did you finish it? He almost laughed through his tears. Yes, sweetheart, but I think you were supposed to add the colors. Her smile, fragile but real, spread across her face. Then I'd better wake up properly, she murmured. The nurse gasped softly. She's coming back. Over the next few days, Lily's recovery was slow but steady. She began sitting up, speaking in short bursts, even laughing faintly when Ethan told her stories about his clumsy attempts at painting. You really tried to draw, she teased one morning. I did, and I discovered I'm terrible at it, he said, smiling. But I'd do it again just to bring you back. Her eyes softened. You did bring me back. He reached for her hand gently. No, Lily, you brought me back from a place darker than any coma. Their connection deepened, no longer built on pity or saving, but on something purer, shared survival. One afternoon, as she flipped through her sketchbook, she stopped at the sunrise drawing. It was finished now, shaded, complete. You did this, she said softly. He nodded. We both did. Tears welled in her eyes. It's beautiful. So are you, he whispered. You're proof that broken things can shine again. Outside, sunlight spilled across the windows like liquid gold. The hospital corridor glowed, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan felt peace instead of guilt. But when Lily turned the next page, her expression changed. There, in faint pencil strokes, was a drawing she didn't remember making, a man and a young girl standing under rain, holding an umbrella together. I must have drawn this before I fell asleep, she said, her voice trembling. Ethan studied it, then smiled. It's us, isn't it? She nodded. I think so. He reached out and touched the page lightly. It's not just us, Lily. It's everyone who ever found love where they least expected it. Her eyes shimmered. You mean like you and Grace? He inhaled sharply, surprised she remembered. Yes, exactly like that. Lily closed the book carefully and leaned back against the pillow. Then maybe Grace is smiling right now, she said softly. Ethan looked out the window, where the sunlight broke through scattered clouds, golden and full, painting everything in warmth. Yes, he whispered. Maybe she is. The hospital room fell quiet again, but this time the silence wasn't heavy. It was gentle, healing, like a pause between heartbeats before something beautiful begins again. Lily looked at him with the faintest smile. When I'm better, I want to draw something new, she said. What's that? A story about a man who found his heart in the rain. He laughed softly. That's not a story. That's the truth. Her eyes met his, bright and alive. Then maybe truth deserves to be drawn too. And in that quiet hospital room, two souls who had lost everything slowly began to rebuild, not from fortune, not from fame, but from the fragile thread of love that had survived every storm. Spring unfurled itself slowly across the city, painting the world in softer colors. The chill that once filled Ethan's mansion had lifted, replaced by laughter, sunlight, and the scent of fresh paint. Lily had moved into the small guest cottage at the back of his garden, a place she'd turned into her art studio. The windows were wide and bright, curtains swaying gently in the morning breeze. Every day began the same way, birdsong, coffee, and the scratch of her pencil. Ethan often stood at the doorway, watching her draw, the corners of his lips curling upward. There was something about that sight, her completely absorbed in color and life, that made him feel younger, lighter. Mr. Hartley, she'd say sometimes, without looking up, stop hovering. You make the pencils nervous. He'd laugh softly. And you make my heart nervous when you call me that. It's Ethan, remember? She'd grin. Ethan, then, but only if you stop worrying every time I sneeze. Their days were full of small joys, tea on the porch, art shows downtown, community classes for children. Ethan had funded the Lily Light Foundation, offering free art supplies and meals for homeless kids. Lily insisted on teaching there herself. If someone hadn't believed in me, she said one evening, I'd still be hungry out there, trading drawing for bread. He nodded quietly, and if someone hadn't drawn for me, I'd still be rich and empty. It was strange how their pain had bloomed into purpose. One afternoon, as they prepared for another exhibition, Lily brought him a canvas covered with cloth. You can't see this until the event, she warned, her eyes twinkling. He smirked. Another secret masterpiece. Something like that, she said, smiling faintly, but her tone carried an undercurrent he couldn't quite place, like joy shadowed by something hidden. If you believe love still wins, comment Amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. The night of the exhibition arrived. The hall shimmered under chandeliers, the hum of conversation blending with soft piano music. Children from the foundation ran between tables, laughing. Cameras flashed as reporters interviewed a girl whose story had once broken the internet. The hungry artist who changed a billionaire's heart. Lily, graceful in a simple white dress, stood near her covered painting. Ethan watched her from the crowd, pride glowing in his eyes. But when she turned, he noticed how pale she looked, how her hands trembled slightly as she held the microphone. Are you okay? He whispered when he reached her side. She nodded quickly. Just nerves. Big crowd. He smiled reassuringly, though something inside him stirred uneasily. As the event reached its climax, the host called out, and now, the final piece of the night, a surprise painting by Lily herself, dedicated to someone very special. Applause erupted. Lily stepped forward, her fingers brushing the edge of the cloth. Her voice, though soft, carried across the hall. This painting is about a promise, the kind made not with words, but with kindness. It's about how one meal can change a life, and how one heart can be reborn in the act of giving. With a gentle pull, she revealed the canvas. Gasps filled the room. It showed a young girl and an older man sitting at a restaurant table, rain pouring outside, light pooling between them. The man's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, while the girl smiled faintly, holding out a sketchbook. Above them, faint words were written in pencil. The day hope was fed. Ethan felt his knees weaken. The crowd rose in applause, but he barely heard them. All he could see was that night, that first encounter in the rain. Lily turned to him, tears streaking her cheeks. Do you like it? She whispered. He reached out, voice breaking. It's everything. It's us. Her smile trembled. Then I did it right. Before he could respond, her body swayed. The crowd cheer faded into alarm. Ethan lunged forward just in time to catch her before she fell. Lily, he shouted, his voice cracking. Someone call an ambulance. She opened her eyes faintly, whispering, I'm okay, just tired again. He cradled her against his chest, heart pounding in terror. Stay with me. Please, not again. You promised you'd finish every sunrise. She tried to smile. Maybe you'll have to finish one more for me. Then her hand slipped from his grasp. The hall erupted into chaos. People rushing, lights flashing, cameras forgotten. Ethan held her tightly, the sound of his heartbeat louder than the noise around him. As medics pushed through the crowd, he whispered against her hair, Don't you dare leave me again. You're my family now. Lily. Her lips barely moved. Family never leaves, even when they go. And then everything went still. The stretcher rolled away under harsh white light, and Ethan followed, his suit soaked in tears and memory. Outside, the rain began to fall again, just as it had the first time they met. Only this time, the sky seemed to cry for them both. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and rain. Ethan sat in the same chair he had occupied months before, his hands clasped together, trembling as the monitors beeped in rhythm with the storm outside. Lily lay unconscious once more, pale as moonlight, the faint rise and fall of her chest keeping his world alive. He whispered her name over and over, like a prayer. "Lily, don't go. Not yet. We have so much left to draw." The doctor entered quietly, his expression unreadable. "She suffered cardiac stress," he said softly. "Her heart is weak, but she's fighting." "Then she's still in there," Ethan murmured. "She's always been a fighter." When the doctor left, Ethan took her hand gently, placing it against his cheek. "You once told me beauty's all you had left," he whispered. "But you were wrong. Lily, you had love. You gave it to everyone who needed it, even a broken man like me." The storm outside deepened, thunder rumbling like grief across the city. Hours passed in silence. Ethan watched the faint flicker of a pulse, his mind swimming through memories. The restaurant, the alley, the art studio, her laughter. Every image felt like a color on a canvas he could never finish. He stood, went to the window, and whispered to the night, "If she leaves, take my years and give them to her. I've had enough of time." And as if the heavens listened, a single bolt of lightning illuminated the room. Lily stirred faintly, her lips parting in a soft breath. "Ethan," she whispered. He spun around, rushing to her side. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm here." Her eyelids fluttered open, her gaze finding him. "Did it rain again?" He laughed through tears. "It always rains for us." She smiled weakly. "Then maybe we're the rain people, always meeting where the sky cries." He pressed his forehead to her hand. "Don't talk like that. You're going to be fine." "I know," she murmured. "Just tired of fighting storms." "Then rest," he said softly. "I'll carry the rain for both of us." She gazed at him, her eyes no longer filled with fear, but peace. "You already have." And with a trembling breath, she whispered, "Tell them to keep drawing hope." Her pulse slowed. The monitor flatlined. The sound tore through Ethan like a blade. Nurses rushed in, but he knew, even before they said it, that Lily's light had gone somewhere beyond the rain. He stood frozen as they covered her face, his world sinking into quiet. Then, slowly, he picked up her sketchbook from the bedside. On the last page was a drawing he hadn't seen before, two figures sitting beneath a clear sky. No rain, no umbrellas, just sunlight and calm. At the bottom, written in her neat, tiny handwriting, were the words, "When it stops raining, smile for me." Ethan broke, but even through the tears, he smiled, a raw, broken, beautiful smile. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." Weeks later, the Lily Light Foundation grew tenfold. Artists, donors, and strangers came from all over the world, drawn by her story. A massive mural was painted outside the center, a young girl sketching under rain, her pencil glowing like a torch. Beneath it read, "Kindness doesn't end with a heartbeat." Every child who picked up a brush then knew Lily's name. Her art hung in galleries, her story spread across millions of screens, the hungry girl who drew for food and ended up feeding hearts instead. Ethan visited the mural every morning. He'd bring a flower, touch the wall gently, and whisper, "It stopped raining today." Then he'd sit among the children, helping them mix colors, guiding trembling hands. And whenever they asked, "Who was Lily?" he'd smile softly and reply, "The girl who taught me how to love without asking anything back." At sunset, he'd walk through the garden, past her old studio. The lights inside still glowed, left on every night, his way of telling the world that a spirit still painted there. Sometimes, when the wind carried the smell of rain, he'd look up at the sky and imagine her laughing, free of pain, somewhere beyond clouds and hunger. And in those moments, he felt her near, not as loss, but as light, because some people leave, only to stay forever in the hearts they healed. And on one quiet evening, years later, a young girl at the shelter asked him, "Mr. Hartley, why do you help all of us so much?" He smiled faintly, tears shimmering. "Because once," he said, "a hungry artist taught me that a full heart matters more than a full plate." He turned toward the mural, sunlight flickering against Lily's painted smile, and whispered, "You finished the sunrise after all."